Mike Vrabel has been linked to the Las Vegas Raiders head coaching job again. And coming up here on today's show, I'm going to tell you why it's really bad for Anotnio Pierce. Before we get into the latest around Vrabel being linked to the silver and black, today's show is presented by Panda Supps. Use code TANK for 20% off at pandasupps.com. They got this brand new blueberry muffin protein that has actual freeze-dried blueberries in it. I'm going to tell you guys about it here in just a moment. But Mike Vrabel, he has been linked to the Raiders yet again in an article released by ESPN, which has tons, and I mean tons of little nuggets. You can go check it out. It is an ESPN article, and a lot of it is some of the sources, some of the inside reporting that ESPN has been hearing. And one of the things that they are hearing is Mike Vrabel is connected to the Raiders head coaching job. Why? Because Tom Brady has been interested in hiring Vrabel amongst the silver and black. So anytime you hear a story, anytime that you hear a report, I always say that rumors are important. That way you can kind of build the story together. It's kind of like a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle. But when you see how many pieces, how much smoke is around Mike Vrabel, if you're a Raiders fan and you're not listening to the reports to this show around Vrabel potentially being the next head coach of the Raiders, I think it's time to get listening here a little bit. So here's what ESPN said. Mike Vrabel's name is buzzing ahead of the coaching carousel. Some believe the former Titans coach would be a candidate in Dallas if the Cowboys move on from Mike McCarthy. Others believe he'd be a candidate in Las Vegas if the Raiders move on from Anotnio Pierce after only one season. New Raiders minority owner Tom Brady is believed to be heavily involved in the decision-making process on the coach, and he and Vrabel are, of course, former teammates. So that's the ESPN report. There's a little bit of smoke. Let's add a little bit more smoke here to this fire. Hondo Carpenter, who's not somebody who's just going to throw stuff out there, said if AP is fired, Brady wants to hire Mike Vrabel. Quote, if AP is terminated, he knows exactly who's coming in. So the fact that Hondo says this on December 18th, the fact that ESPN puts it out the exact same timeline on December 18th, that tells me that somebody told Hondo something, and then somebody probably told one of the connections of ESPN something very similar. But what's interesting about this is exactly what we've been talking about. So here's what Hondo had to say. I can tell you that I have been told by enough people who know Tom Brady very well, if Anotnio Pierce is terminated, he knows exactly who's coming in. Now, they'll have to go through all the rules of interviewing a bunch of people, but he'll know who he's bringing in. Hondo's talking about Mike Vrabel, and that's what we're going to discuss here on today's show. So what this thing is all about, well, the way that we made the Raiders Report a thing is we opened the doors up to the nation to get their votes in so your voice can be heard. I'm loud. Chugs is loud. All of us together, we could be very loud. So pick a head coach. This is going to be the pinned comment here on today's show. If you want Mike Vrabel next year, type MV. If you want Anotnio Pierce, I want you to type AP. My answer coming up after this YouTube ad break. It's Mike Vrabel, and I got to think this year with my head because last year I thought with my heart. And I'm not going to speak on behalf of the entire nation here, but everybody, and when I say everybody, a lot of people wanted Anotnio Pierce to work. Even the people that said AP's not going to work, I think in the heart of hearts, wanted the guy that at the end of the day was like, that dude is a Raider. But now we got to look at ourselves in the mirror and go, I don't think it worked out all that well, and it's time to go ahead and look at somebody bringing in that's going to be a little bit better. For me, that's why I'm going to go with Mike Vrabel. So coming up, some of the smoke around Vrabel, because this is not new. You know what I'm talking about? Like, we're talking about Vrabel being brought up again because it's not the first time, it's not the second time, it's not the third time, and I get that people are really busy. And people aren't watching the Raiders in a year that's kind of a shitty year. So we're going to be breaking down a lot of the things that y'all need to know around this situation. But if you didn't know that the silver and black, that the Las Vegas Raiders were interested in Mike Vrabel, I mean this from the bottom of my heart, you need to subscribe. I want y'all to be the fans that, your buddies talk about, like, oh, I know this one guy, he knows a lot about the Raiders. And if because you know a lot about the Raiders from watching the show, you doing your own research, that's what I love to hear. But if you've never heard about Mike Vrabel and the Raiders, dude, hit that subscribe button. Back on November 19th, I said, if the Raiders move on from Anotnio Pierce, it will 100% be Mike Vrabel. If you don't believe me, Go check out the video I did on November 19th because this is not anything new. So let's take a little bit of a walk here through that Vrabel timeline. And the Chuck probably just heard the walk word, and he's like, dude, where are you at right now? January 18th, he was linked to the job last season. So this is from a show that we did. If you want to go back and check it out, these notes are from January 18th, 2024. And there was a report that Tom Brady wants the Raiders to hire Mike Vrabel. There were reasons, let's just say, that when Antonio Pierce was going to get the job and everything was pointing to AP getting the job, do y'all remember there was like a 24 to 48 hour window of like nothing was being said? Nobody knew who the head coach was. There was no reports going on. And I'm telling you this because I got a message from multiple Raiders players saying, hey, can you get higher AP going? Obviously, it doesn't look good now, but I know I'm not the only content creator. Like many other YouTube creators, Graphic Raider was one of those guys that also got messages of being like, hey, we want AP to be the head coach. So the fact that players were reaching out to YouTubers tells me that the Brady-Vrabel conversations were very, very real conversations. Let's go to what Mike Florio had to say, who, another person, very tied in with NFL circles, and also it's around that January 2024 circle of the word on the NFL streets over the weekend was that you start connecting dots. Vrabel to the Raiders. Tom Brady immediately involved in the team, even though his attempt to purchase 5 to 10% of the franchise is yet to be approved. Now, obviously, we know that that's been approved, but Tom Brady, is involved, and he and Vrabel are tight. So, this is not something that's just been popping up. The way that I would imagine the conversation between Tom Brady and Mark Davis went is this. I want Mike Vrabel. Mark Davis said, I get you want Vrabel, but Raider Nation wants Antonio Pierce. I got players like Max Crosby saying, hey, I'm going to get traded unless you bring back AP. And I think a lot of the AP conversation was brought on because of Rich Bisaccio. Tom Brady was probably like, all right, I'll give you guys 1 year with Antonio Pierce, but if it's a dumpster fire, I want to bring in my guy. I want to bring in Mike Vrabel. 2-12 to me sounds like a dumpster fire. So the rumors around Vrabel are not new, and that is a very, very important thing. We got coming up here some more smoke around Vrabel in case you missed it. But you know what? I don't know something. I was going to bring up something about smoke, but I'm just going to tell you this. This protein right here, straight fire. And I'm telling you right now, if you need some awesome protein, if you're trying to get into better shape, I was actually talking to Alex's mom yesterday about trying out some Panda Subs protein because I always say this, if you're somebody that's trying to lose weight, it's very important to find a protein that fills up your stomach but also tastes great and gives your body the nutrition you need. Sometimes when I drink a protein shake, I'm hungry in an hour, I'm hungry in 2 hours later. If you take a protein shake from Panda, it is designed to be able to fuel your body, hence the name Fuel, for multiple hours. So you take a protein shake, you're going to be good for 3, 4, 5 hours. It's really helped me slim up. It's helped me lose a lot of weight. I do a lot of shenanigans on this show, but I need to learn how to take care of my body. So if you're like, you know what, Mitch, blueberry muffin, which, again, real blueberries inside that protein. Let's just say that's not your cup of tea. Well, guess what? You can also get yourself a cup of pineapple whip, maybe some chocolate ice cream, mint chocolate chip. The protein flavors are so good, you can't even realize. You're going to drink it, and you're going to be like, there's no way this is good for me. Here's the coolest part. It's great for you. 30 grams of protein. You're looking at somewhere between 140 and 163 calories per scoop. It's going to fuel your body. It's unbelievable. The code is TANK because the guy who owns Panda Subs is a diehard Raiders fan. 20% off at pandasubs.com. Use code TANK. That link's in the comments and in the description of today's show. The reason why Panda Subs has been sponsoring the show for over 4 years. 1, well, the nation's been buying it. 2, people keep buying it. So the fact that they've been around, it tells me Panda Subs has been killing it. And I think you guys know. For people who have tried it, it is very good. Let's go to something else here. November 6th, I did a video around the Raiders eyeing Mike Vrabel. So this was during a mailbag, but this is and I can't remember the exact date, and I'm just going to be 100% honest with you, that I was told around Vrabel Raiders, the connections are starting to go. And that's usually how it goes, where you start to hear things, and once you start to hear things, you pay attention to it a little bit more. Well, I'm telling you, the smoke around Vrabel to the Raiders really started to pick up for me based on the people that I talked to right around this date here, November 6th. Well, then you look at November 18th. Another report comes out that Mike Vrabel is the front runner if Antonio Pierce ends up getting fired, which Completely agree. This has been another thing that we have discussed multiple times on this show. So then when you hear everything that I have been told, I put it out in the universe, November 6th essentially. And then for a guy like Mike Vrabel of the Pro Football Report, they put out an article around what they're hearing on November 18th, and it sounds very similar to what I was saying back on the 6th. So Pierce's job is not safe, and there is growing expectation in league circles that Mike Vrabel is going to be the next head coach of the Raiders. Brady was involved in the process that led to the hiring of Pierce, but sources have indicated that Pierce was not Brady's top choice for the job. Should the team move on from Pierce, Vrabel is considered the front runner for the job. Then, I already mentioned it, but the November 19th, 100% it will be Vrabel. Like, I stood up here on the show, which I don't always do, and I give something for just win babies. When I give something for just win babies, it's me telling you it's 100% going to happen. And I sat up here and I said, if Mike Vrabel, if Antonio Pierce is fired, it's going to be Mike Vrabel. And I think for a lot of the loyal watchers around here kind of know, this has been something that we've been putting out there in that universe over and over and over again. You know why? Because it's being put out in the universe over and over and over again by a lot of people, which means a lot of conversations around this. Before we get into the final reason here, the final Vrabel to Las Vegas timeline, if Mike Vrabel is a head coach in 2025, where will he be coaching? Because I'll tell you this, if you think the Raiders are the only team interested in Vrabel, you live under a rock. I do think that Ben Johnson is going to be the top choice, but I think more teams are going to be interested in Mike Vrabel based on than Ben Johnson. That's just what I am hearing right now. So where do I think that Vrabel's going to be coaching if he's a head coach? I'm going to say it's the Las Vegas Raiders. And I can remember many years ago I put out a statement being like, Tom Brady has a better chance of being quarterback than Derek Carr, and it got legs. I'm telling you this, Mike Vrabel has a better chance of being the Raiders head coach than Antonio Pierce does next season. But if AP, for whatever reason, does not want to be the Raiders head coach, I believe he's going to be the head coach of his alma mater at Ohio State. These are some other teams that I could throw out. To me, it's Raiders, it's Ohio State, then it's Cowboys. Huge tier gap down below. Coming up, why Vrabel being linked to the Raiders. Honestly, it's bad for Antonio Pierce. And it's not rocket science of why it's bad. We all know that it's bad, but at the same time, you're sitting there going, well, what exactly is going to happen? I will say this. The other part, which I forgot to mention, the other part here of the timeline for Mike Vrabel, we're just tying back into what we talked about originally on the show, the ESPN, the Hondo Report. A lot of smoke. And usually when you see smoke like this from all the different areas, there's a reason. And it's because Mike Vrabel to the Raiders is a legit chance of that happening. Now, I do want to say this. Hopefully y'all pull up to our watch party. This might be the watch party that scares the shit out of me the most because you got a 3-11 Jags team up against the 2-12 Raiders team. A game that I've seen the Raiders being favored in, probably because Aiden O'Connell's going to get the start. If you got nothing going on Sunday and you want to party with Shugs and I, hopefully you pull up. We're going to have a lot of holiday deals and we're going to have a good time. So why Vrabel is bad news for Antonio Pierce? First reason. Vrabel is a very well-respected coach amongst a lot of NFL circles out there. He's a big name, which obviously is important to Mark Davis, but he was the Titans head coach from 2018 to 23, where he had a 54-45 record, 2-3 in the postseason. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champ as a player, and he was coach of the year in 2021. Mike Vrabel is a damn good head coach. I'm telling you that right now. We always talk about quarterbacks like, is he a top 32 quarterback? Mike Vrabel's a top 32 head coach. Quite frankly, he's a top 16 head coach. Great relationship with Tom Brady. This is important. Tom Brady's going to be a big decision maker. And one of the things that I reported back on November 19th is whoever the head coach of the Raiders is, you have to be willing to be taking a back seat to Brady. Vrabel is going to be willing to take a back seat to Brady in regards of quarterback because Vrabel's going to have more of his stamp on the defensive side of the football. But these guys were teammates for multiple seasons. They won multiple Super Bowls together. They are close personal friends. And when you know that Brady's top choice was Vrabel last season, that relationship, I'm telling you, is extremely important. And then the final reason is this. Mike Vrabel is a better head coach than Antonio Pierce. If that is an out-of-pocket statement to you, I just simply say it's time to wake up. And quite frankly, I think the Raiders moving on from Antonio Pierce for Mike Vrabel is simply a business decision. And if anybody should understand that the Raiders need to make a business decision, it's probably Antonio Pierce. It's no hard against AP, but let's be real. We tried the AP experiment. Did not work. Now it's time to look ahead, smarten up, and go with Mike Vrabel to be the next head coach of this team.